H-Town, what it do? I'm Nick Stevenson, a.k.a. the president of Houston Sports. He's Ruben Calvillo, Mr. 713. This is the Twin Toros podcast. You ready, big dog?
I'm ready. I'm excited, man. Let's get it going.
Let's get it. All right, man. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's been supporting the show. This is our second installment in collaboration with ESPN Houston. And I want to remind you guys, if you're watching our ESPN videos are going to be reaction videos every Tuesday at 8 o'clock after the game. We do a preview of each week on Ruben's channel, which is 713 Houston Sports. You can look him up on YouTube. I'll make sure all of his links are in the description. And then you can find me on Houston Sports State of the Union podcast on YouTube, and I'll have all of my links in the description as well. Thank you guys so much for your support. It's been a fun ride so far. All right, Ruben.
Yes, sir.
Texans versus Jags. My notes, I put Texans escape with a win over a desperate Jacksonville. Once again, Stroud saves the day. There's going to be positive. There's going to be some negative we're going to talk about. Overall, though, tell me your feeling on the win.
I felt a little underwhelmed. Heading into this game, I thought this was going to be the game for the Houston Texans offense to just, explode. And, when you look at the stat sheet, they kind of did. And once again, what's plagued us the past 2 weeks plagued us again, which was the penalties from this offensive line. However, there were some bright spots. You have arguably a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, and Nico Collins. And Nick, he is on pace for 2,000 yards. Your quarterback in year 2 has shown you he is a guy. He is a franchise guy, despite being held back by all these penalties. I could put up 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a game-winning drive, right? You saw some not big-name players have a huge impact. Dare, Agumbawale, what a huge day he had through the air. It was an ugly game. It was an ugly win. You could definitely take some positives, but you could also take some negatives. You mentioned Jacksonville Jaguars coming in desperate. They are now, I think, the only, team to not have a victory in the NFL. When is that whole situation going to collapse after their owner said this is the most talented Jaguars team I've ever seen?
Yeah. We talked about last week how this was an opportunity to really put your foot on their neck and put them out of their misery. And yes, you did get the win, and I believe you are correct. They are the only team without a win. They're definitely the only team without a win in the division after the Titans got their first win last night. But it didn't really feel like you put them away. I think you blow them out in that game, and Doug Peterson probably doesn't have a job on Monday morning. I don't know, I'm not too worried about what their situation is, man. They obviously are having problems. They haven't won a game since November of last year. But that's what really made
against the Panthers, like you said.
Yeah. So that is what really made you feel like this was an opportunity for this to be a get right game.
Facts.
And it wasn't really a get right game. Now, instead of false starts and illegal procedures, we traded those in for illegal man downfield and holding calls. So I'm not trying to put a silver lining on that, but hey, maybe next week we get rid of those penalties as well, and we end up playing a clean game. And we're going to need to.
You might see those 30 points that we've been searching for.
Yeah, and here's the deal. Like you said, despite all of the issues they had on the offensive line with penalties, there was a few times where CJ and Nico specifically were able to overcome those penalties and create some fantastic plays. I thought also that Stephon Diggs had a really good game. So what we saw was the potential of what this offense could be. Still not quite there, but like you said, CJ threw for over 300 yards, had 2 touchdowns, protected the ball, no interceptions. It's one of those things, man. I always compare it to sometimes Coach Prime after a Colorado win when they beat somebody that they should have beaten handily and they barely beat him. It's like you feel good about the win, but at the same time, you kind of don't. And you hate to nitpick a win in the NFL, right? But we haven't quite felt that dominant performance that we really believe that they should be having.
Yeah, man. 2 years ago, we would have been so happy with this win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. But
Mm-hmm.
like we mentioned, with all the expectations and the fact that we haven't seen a full quarter, I'm sorry, full 4 quarters from this Houston Texan offense, we both called it the get right game. And like I said, I think they did get it right. You were still pretty successful on the ground. It's just we have to see how this offense looks without all these penalties, with Joe Mixon being bad, with Tank Dell being back, man. It's still a product that we haven't seen finish.
Yeah.
So I am excited there. What I am concerned about, Nick, is concerned about the flow of the offense.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a
Seems like
tale of two halves, right?
wasting time out there, not trying to, put up 7, put up 3. You had a big play by Nico Collins, and then you run the ball that goes, nowhere. I thought the flow of the offense, just wasn't right yet again. However, like I said, when you do have these penalties, and you heard D'Amico Ryan say after the game, we could be a really good football team if we don't play, in our own way.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can think about 3 plays on the ground by either Cam Akers. A couple of them were CJ Stroud, and then the big catch that Stephon Diggs had that was negated by holding calls, man. So once again, that potential is there, but you're right. The flow, and I don't know if you're chalking that up to play calling by Bobby Slowick.
I mean, you kind of have to, right? He's
Yeah.
the one, that's orchestrating the offense. I would just like to see them go in attack mode.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I want to see. Have these boys go up tempo, not giving this defense any chance to rest. That's what I was expecting when you have, 3 elite, wide receivers.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get that win, when and Tank Dell comes back. But
Yeah. And
I want to see this offense go in attack mode. And maybe we haven't seen that yet because Joe Mixon is not here. And, maybe he gets back against Buffalo. Man, we see this offense explode. Who knows?
Yeah. I thought it was kind of a tale of two halves, too. In the first half, you get a defensive 3 and out immediately. That's a positive. Then, unfortunately, Sims muffs a punt. And I can't fault the defense.
Cut him.
I mean, that's his only job, right? He's not catching passes. I think they gave him 1 run out of the backfield. It was a negative play. So I would say give him another week to maybe redeem himself. He's got to start going north and south again. He's doing this whole east-west thing, and it's not working out for him on his returns. But yeah, I can't blame the defense for giving up a touchdown when the next drive started on the 2-yard line. And then the Texans did what they needed to do. They responded with a long touchdown drive. They hold Jacksonville to a field goal after that. And then in the second quarter, the touchdown pass to Nico. We had a field goal that probably could have been a touchdown. CJ missed Nico a little high in the back of the end zone. Still, overall, 17 points in the first half versus a team that, at least talent-wise, is a good defense. I thought it was a good first half. And then in the second half, I don't know what happened.
No, that third quarter was absolutely horrible. I mean, that third quarter had me stressed. It felt like, man, is Jacksonville going to steal one here in Houston? I mean, they had all momentum, in the third quarter. And then when you see the throws that Trevor Lawrence missed, you're like, oh my God, they should be pulling away.
Yeah.
And just the fact that T-Law cannot put it where it needs to be, that's the only reason why you're in this game.
Yeah.
Then the fourth quarter started. Then this offense woke the hell up. And, it was 7-12. And, it was also our boy Dari out there making some things shake. But
yeah, for sure.
fourth quarter, this offense woke up. And if the offense would have been in the third quarter also, we're probably not talking about this being a close game.
Yeah.
And it had to come down to CJ Stroud being the franchise guy and leading the game-winning drive. That's why I say, bro, I was concerned with, with the style of play calling in the third quarter when you go, I think it was 3 or 4 straight drives to just punt.
Yeah, 3 and out.
There's no rhythm from the offense. That's why
I was honestly, there was concerned. There was a couple of punts in the fourth quarter too. I mean, when they punted the ball away with a little less than 5 minutes, you're hoping to God that they can get it back. And you got to give the defense credit, man. I was talking
You knew
about
they
some
were. You knew they were.
for sure, because the defense, like I said, I think overall they played well. I had some notes. Huge performance by Derek Stingley in the clutch.
Yep.
He did have some gaffes in the run game, man, and we can talk about that at some point. He broke contain a few times, but when it came time to drop his you-know-what, he did it, man, and I was very impressed with him. Kalen Bullock struggled in a few plays, but that play where he stops and trips up Tank Bigsby from scoring, I mean, that was possibly the play of the game, if not the stop on fourth down at the goal line, which I'm going to give the Texans credit for it, but that's a terrible play call by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, and it was completely scripted.
Peterson, he thought he had Jalen Hurts. But
I guess.
Kalen Bullock, that play, man, it swarmed. That special work ethic and relentless mindset. If Bigsby scores the touchdown, we're looking at a whole different game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Kalen Bullock, man, we were having some concerns about this secondary. 2 rookies starting, and so far, 4 weeks into the season, we could say that these rookies have been a plus. And Kalen Bullock, I am becoming a fan.
Yeah,
he is a dog.
I'm always gonna be patient with rookies, man. You've been a fan long enough. You remember fans hated Kareem Jackson for what, 2-3 years?
Oh, he was horrible though, bro. He was.
Yeah,
we had a right to hate him though.
They hated Kareem Jackson for what, 2-3 years, but he figured some things out. Now, I don't know that Kareem Jackson walked into a situation where the expectation, at least outside of the locker room, was this is a Super Bowl contender. So Kalen Bullock comes into a situation where the microscope is on him even more, and I think overall he's performed really well. Kamari Lassiter, like you said, there was a couple of breaks in coverage, which once we start playing different quarterbacks, Josh Allen's going to be in the building.
Some type of way, I'm telling you, I love Kamari Lassiter, and I trust them in short yardage situations and things like that. Or if we're in the red zone, I know I could trust Kamari, but it's been multiple times. You could guarantee at least once or twice a game, you see Kamari Lassiter being beat, but the quarterback could just not put it there. Once we get to the Pat Mahomes, the Jared Goff, who had 100% completion percentage last night, it's going to get real interesting to see. But hopefully when you get to that moment, Kamari has learned from these mistakes, which is why, dude,
he's going to have to learn quick. Josh Allen's going to be here next week. He's going to have to learn quick.
Dude, I'm excited for this game.
Me too.
I really am.
I'm an. If anybody hasn't figured out by now, I am an optimistic Texan supporter. I try to keep it real. I try not to be too much of a homer. We on this show, we're not going to pander to the people who just want to hear us always say glowing things about the Texans. We're going to call them out when they don't look the way that we feel like they should, and we have. But at the end of the day, you look at the landscape of the NFL. You're 3-1. Right now, the Chiefs are 3-1. I believe the Buffalo Bills are 3-1. You got a few 3-1 teams in the AFC. It could be worse, man. You could be the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm not. And we talked about how the standard definitely has raised for this Houston Texans team, but I saw enough positive in this game to know we're close, man. We're so close. If we could just put this thing together, this team is going to be really, really good. And I think they are really, really good. Nico Collins, CJ Stroud, those were the other huge performances I put in my notes. Just talk about that connection and what it's looking like these days, man.
It's just elite. And, we haven't seen this quarterback wide receiver, combo since Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson. I wanted to bring up D-Hop, but dear God, he had about 14 different quarterbacks thrown to him. So he could not build a connection with anyone. Man, when CJ Stroud called Nico Collins, Andre Johnson, I kind of laughed. Andre Johnson's my favorite player. Andre Johnson's the reason why I fell in love with the game of football. I grew up wanting to be number 80. And I see, and dude, it's hard not to see flashes of number 80 out there on the field. Nico Collins, it's always open. And like I mentioned, early on in our episode, he's on pace for 2,000 yards. That's insane. He's leading the league in receiving yards. The second is Malik Neighbors, and Nico Collins has 100 yards on him. He might be a top 3 wide receiver dude, if he keeps this up, we're talking about the best wide receiver in the NFL. We're talking about maybe offensive player of the year
Yeah,
type of player. That's how special Nico Collins is. And shout out to general manager Nick Caserio, because not only did he select Nico Collins in the third round out of Michigan, he gave him a 3-year, $75 million contract extension. That is a steal.
that's his steal
Nick,
right now.
if we would have to pay Nico at the end of this year, dear God, we would have made him one of the highest paid offensive players.
Yeah, for
He's
sure,
he's
for
elite.
sure.
He's a superstar in the making, and he's still very young, man. We're gonna have a lot of great years
Yeah,
of 7 to 12. And like Drewski said, man, 12's out here.
12's out here. Yeah, man. And a franchise that boasts, like you said, Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins, one in the Hall of Fame. I believe DeAndre Hopkins is a Hall of Fame receiver as well. Neither one of those through 4 games have had as many yards as Nico Collins has this season. So that's saying something. And man, I got to say, I've never seen a player go from, 2 years ago, this man was first team all practice squad
JAX.
to all of a sudden, and I can't give all the credit to CJ, but you do have to give some of the credit to CJ.
Absolutely.
We've seen quarterbacks, we've seen Andre Johnson have subpar quarterback play. We saw DeAndre Hopkins have a lot of subpar quarterback play. But for whatever reason, man, that connection between CJ Stroud to Nico Collins, it's special, man. And it's what's carried this team offensively so far. Let's keep it real. Stephon Diggs hasn't been terrible. He's made some big plays, and he's done what I expected him to do. I didn't think he needed to be spectacular because you have Nico Collins. When he's targeted, he catches the ball. He does his job. And overall, I got to say, offensively, as far as the receivers go, I'm extremely happy. We got to get that O-line cleaned up, man. Let's do some position grades. Speaking of the O-line, I want to start with the front 7, man. What did you give the front 7 grade for this game?
I'll give it a C plus. It didn't really do anything special. It didn't, get to Trevor Lawrence like we thought they were going to. Last week he was running for his life against the Buffalo Bills. T-Law has been sacked at least 3 times in the last 3 weeks prior to this matchup. And the fact that neither Will Anderson Jr. or Danielle Hunter got to him was kind of disappointing. The only sack was from Eric Murray. The last dude, we haven't seen a highlight from number 23 since Arian Foster. So shout out to Eric Murray, man. He had himself a game.
For sure.
But, on the ground too, over 100 yards. And of course, one came from that big play from Tank Bigsby. But it was bend, don't break. I didn't really have a lot of concerns because when this defense needed to drop their nuts, that's what they absolutely did, right? You brought up Derek Stingley gets targeted in the end zone, incomplete. You talk about the 4th and 1 T-Law, quarterback draw for Lorenzo Fatukasi. Just great job by him keeping his eyes in the backfield, sheds the tackle, boom, you're not going nowhere. So this defense definitely had their moments, man. And, you talk about on third down, how many times DeMeco Ryans blitz, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So there's a lot of things you could take away. You wipe away, the muffed punt, we're looking at a 24-13 game.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's like your self-inflicted wounds almost lost you this game.
Yeah.
And I can't really take anything away. And just great hustle play by Kalen Bullock.
Yeah, for sure. That's the reason I gave the front 7 a B+. The 4th down stop, they did give up a couple of big runs, but honestly, I said before, on a couple of those, the secondary loss contained as well. So I can't 100% put that on them. But when it came for the big time stops, they got him, man. And no, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter did not get to Trevor Lawrence, but I thought they did a good job of pressuring him, especially early on. He did have there was a couple of times, I'll give it to you, he had time in the pocket to set his feet, throw the ball, and he just missed it. So I can't give him an A because there's some plays out there that a better quarterback is going to make. So I gave him a B+. The secondary, I gave him a B+. They were picking on Petrie a little bit, but he also made some big plays in crunch time, man. You brought up Eric Murray, huge pass breakup, the sack. I'm not really all that worried about the defense, man. And we talked about that last week. If this O-line, which I gave a C-, what'd you give them?
Oh yeah. just the same. It's not like they had a bad day. CJ was only sacked twice. You were able to get the 4 yards on the ground that Bobby Slowick, has been talking about all off season. It's just the consistent penalties, man. And we can
Yeah.
have a whole 1 hour episode how these penalties are gonna just kill the Houston Texans and have killed the Houston Texans. Um, I give it a C, man. And thank God Laramie Tunsil did not fall sorry, because if he did, oh my God, the stadium would have erupted.
Yeah, they were booing for sure. But like I said, we traded in for different penalties this week. The reason I didn't give them an F is because, and this is what's probably so frustrating for Texans fans, Ruben, when it counted the most, that last drive of the fourth quarter, focused, disciplined, clean football, no penalties. And every time a play happened, you were probably looking at the bottom of the screen waiting for that yellow flag to pop up. But they kept it clean. They focused, and that lets you know they're capable of doing it. Have that same level of focus and intensity from the first quarter all the way to the final buzzer. And I think this team's cooking with grease, man.
Dude, I think so too, man. You wipe even 3 or 4 of these penalties away, you can still have a holding call here, a false start call here. I'm not telling you to play perfect football, but right now you're playing undisciplined football.
Yeah.
Penalties are going to happen, but like D'Amico Ryan said, it's the boneheaded ones, that make them so frustrated. You wipe these up, man. We're talking about a very strong offense, a very strong day against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Because they're taking away big plays, and that's the problem.
It's
They're taking away big plays. It's happened for sure. So I gave the receivers an A+, mostly because of Nico Collins. And I gave CJ, I gave him an A, not an A+, just because he did miss a couple of throws. He had a great day, but he could have had a monster day. He did miss Nico a couple of times, just sailed the ball a little bit. But you see the potential for this team, man. And I think, like I said, overall, I want to get your overall feeling. We're just about a quarter of the way through the season, 3-1. We've probably played the least difficult part of our schedule thus far. You're 3-1. Going into the next quarter of the season, man, what's your confidence level and what's your concern level?
My confidence level is still at a high. You were able to get to 3-1 with all these mistakes. I will say this, though. You can't have that against the Bills, the Lions, the Chiefs, because it's going to be hard to win a football game with 10 penalties and you have almost 70 yards called against you. If they do clean it up, and I think they will, we will see a better Houston Texans football team. Look, 3-1 is hard to do in this league. Your chances of making the playoffs are extremely high. Right now, you are first place in the AFC South. If you would have told me in the offseason, hey, Ruben, the first month of the season with no context, the Houston Texans were 3-1, I would have said, I believe you.
Right.
But what the expectations that we have, and now that you're a quarter of a way through, it's now time to buckle down, right? Now you have an opportunity to continue to further yourselves in the rankings. I think right now, if I could double check, the Houston Texans are currently the second seed in the AFC.
Yep. Behind Kansas City.
You keep this up, Houston. You're going to find yourselves, happy that you were able to be 3-1 despite all these mistakes. Now that you're, mistake-free, we're having fun and we're watching some damn good Houston Texans football. I'm still confident in this team, man. I'm a little concerned about the penalties, though. And that's what's crazy. It's not like I'm concerned about CJ Stroud. Is he having a sophomore slump? We're not having those conversations, right? We're not having conversations of, is D'Amico Ryan's defense horrible? No, we're not having that. It's 3 straight games of 10+ penalties, and we're on pace to shatter, the record for penalties called against us. And I feel like that's the only thing holding back this team, because, hell, you even get one on special teams, too.
Yeah. Can you imagine if 35 penalties, 296 yards in the last 3 games?
Dude.
Take away half of that. I mean, in your first game, you scored 29 points. It was a defensive struggle versus the Bears, and then the Minnesota game, they were just constantly in their own way. But you scored 24 against the Jaguars. I mean, and you're 3-1. So we have to listen, man. My concern level is there, but I would say I'm more confident than concerned because I trust D'Amico Ryans. I trust CJ Stroud as a leader. I trust some of the other veterans on this team, and I trust their mindset, man. They're a bunch of guys who love football. They play hard. I don't think they have any cancers in the locker room. I know people like to throw around that term about Laramie Tunsil sometimes, but we talked about it, man. Laramie Tunsil, regardless of what you want to say, he's one of the best left tackles, and we saw that immediately when he rolled his ankle and came out of the game. Immediately, CJ had more pressure on him, and I like Blake Fisher, but he just didn't look ready. So at the end of the day, this is the team we got. There's not going to be any major roster moves made between now and the end of this season. We'll probably mix some things around, but they just got to clean it up. And the good news is they got, 13 more weeks now to do it.
Sure.
And it's still going to be a really exciting season, man. I'm looking forward to this Buffalo game. For all of you who are watching us on ESPN Houston, we will be doing a preview of the Texans versus the Buffalo Bills a little bit later in the week on Ruben's channel, 713 Houston Sports. So I don't want to get too much into it, man, but for that game, what do you know for a fact the Texans are going to have to be better at to get a dub?
We could just throw away, the penalties point because, we could talk about that every single time.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see this running game be as successful as it was in week 1 against Indy. Is Joe Mixon going to return? I think that's going to be a huge, addition if he is. Yeah. On the other side, the Buffalo Bills have a damn good rushing attack. Not only is it Josh Allen, but it's James Cooks as well. And it's going to be a real test for this Houston Texans front four. If you could contain the running game, because you're not going to be able to stop it, I think the Houston Texans are going to have some opportunities, to win this football game. They have a lot of underrated wide receivers. Khalil Shakir from Boise State, who I wanted in the draft. They also have Keon Coleman out of FSU, an athletic freak. So it's going to be another test for this Houston Texans secondary. However, if you go back and watch Kamari Lassiter's tape at Georgia, you see he's lacking of Keon Coleman. So that's going to be a fun matchup to see. But just the quick ones, man. Win the war in the trenches, win the turnover battle. Josh Allen might give you one.
It's for sure. It sounds cliche, but that's really the key, man. Watch the tape on Baltimore versus the Buffalo Bills. They did a really good job of containing that offense, but that also means Buffalo Bills coming in here off of a somewhat embarrassing loss for them. So they're going to be hungry to redeem themselves. I'm excited, bro. We got the H-Town jerseys for the first time. NRG is going to be lit, bro. You going to be out there at the tailgate?
Always we'll be at the Horns Up tailgating spot, and then we'll also be at the H-Town tailgating crew. Both fantastic spots.
Awesome, man. If you guys are at the game, go say what's up to Ruben. And we appreciate you guys so much for joining us for this podcast. We appreciate ESPN. Thanks to Joe George for giving us the opportunity to celebrate the Houston Texans with the fans of H-Town. I want to remind you guys once again where you can find all of our content. Ruben is at 713 Houston Sports on X, IG, TikTok. I will have his link tree in the description. You can find me on Houston Sports State of the Union podcast right here on YouTube. I'll also have all my links in the description. We both got some really cool stuff coming up. Ruben does daily Houston Texans content, man. He is the man in H-Town to get your Houston Texans content from. Myself, I cover all Houston sports in the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. I will be interviewing Mirin Fader in about an hour. She is the person who wrote Hakeem Olajuwon's biography, Dream. I'm looking forward to that. I'll be interviewing her for the podcast and for an article in the Dream Shake. So, man, I love being in H-Town. I love the city of Houston. I love being on ESPN Houston. Ruben, what you got to say before we get out of here?
Man, guys, I'm excited for the rest of the season. We got through the first month. Can't wait for more. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in. And let's continue to see where this Houston Texans team goes, but I'm excited.
Absolutely. So we're going to get back with you guys next week. In the meantime, you know what we want you to do. Stay 10 toes down for the H. We love you. Good night.